Hey guys, Kevin here again. I was looking on YouTube trying to find some build videos of the atmospheric Adventures Kratos and couldn't find any even from Boba Fett. So what I'm going to do today is show you guys how I'm building mine. It's going to be a kissed Kratos today, so that should be exciting. If you can see in the background, I also have the UB130. I'll probably be making a video of that shortly. But in the meantime, we're going to build a Kratos and see how she does. So first, starting out here, I've already gotten the frame out. Just washed it off a little bit to get some of the carbon dust because that stuff is not good for you. Overall, it's a pretty stiff frame. It's not as stiff as my alien that I have. I looked at it and it looks like the layers are a little bit thicker, or there's just less of them than my alien, which I'll grab here. But it's really hard to tell. You got to look really up close. But the alien definitely has thicker layers, or excuse me, definitely has more layers. But then again, it's also another $25 on top of the Kratos in price. So I'm just going to set that aside. This is also Kiss. This is the Rotor Riot alien build pretty much. So I'm kind of going to follow this. I might use their video actually just to make sure I remember some connections and whatnot. Bought about $50 worth of silicon wire from Sears, so this is what that looks like. Gonna try to do something a little special and use my motor, my XT60 to the PDB. I'm gonna have this orange and blue because those are Bucknell colors, so I thought I'd start doing that on all my builds as a little unique touch to make it my own. But overall, this is everything you get in the kit. You get the cow catchers. As you post, you get a little 3D printed, probably a TPU or flexible filament for the bottom of the PDB to kind of isolate it from the circuit board. The PDB. You get this board here, but you need some Pololus to run it. I just went right ahead and ordered some that already come pre-soldered with those on there. That way it's a little bit easier. And I've never used a Pololu before. I'm sure it's easy to just solder that up and use it, but the price difference it wasn't really worth it for me to solder all of it when I can just get that one that already has everything. So there's that. You get a nice little atmospheric Adventures strap, and then you also get a red XT60. Haven't decided if I'm going to use that yet. I might. And then this is the top plate here. Mine has a little mark here. I don't know if this was an error in the CNC process or if a piece actually goes there. I'm thinking a piece does actually go there if I remember correctly, but I guess we'll find out later in the build. You get these nice red standoffs as well and some stickers in the bottom there. But basically the plan is to do a fully kissed build. So I have kissed 24 amp ESCs. These are version 1.02, so I will have to flash them. That's not a big deal. And then I have a Kiss FC here. I'm basically going to line them all up, make sure that everything fits, just get everything set up. And then the motors I'm going to be using are red bottom 2205s, not the new S ones, but the older ones. So I'll be getting those and putting them on shortly just so I can get all the wire lengths correct. And then once I do all that, I'm going to start pre-soldering everything and getting that ready. I got a new soldering iron for Christmas. They have these at my school. Steel uses them. I really haven't had any problems with them, so I thought it was a good value to pick one of these up. And then also this guy, so that way I can have a little bit better arms than the previous ones that I were using because those were falling apart. So let's get started. Alright, so I just quick put it together just to see the basic layout of how everything goes. I have the little cow catchers here, so I can put those on so you guys can get an idea of what they're going to look like. There's this piece there if you're going to use something that doesn't have a connector right attached to the VTX. Haven't decided yet if I'm going to use this or this back plate here. But now I'm basically just trying to figure out, okay, where's the PDB is going to go in there on the bottom. Kiss is going to go in like this in the side here. That'll be spaced on top, so good thing they give you tall standoffs. So that's going to sit in there just like that. And then all my ESC wires are going to be going right here. And then I have to bring the signal wires around this here and around the back here. I'm guessing my power cord is going to have to come out around the back here. I'm going to double check Boba Fett's videos to see where his power wire comes out, but I'm guessing that's where it comes. I haven't decided if I'm going to do a top mount or bottom mount battery yet. That's still to come. Considering how thin this top plate is, it's noticeably thinner than my Alien. Yeah, just looking here, I think my Alien's at least 1.5 or 2 maybe. This one, yeah, I mean, it might be similar. This one feels a lot sturdier. I'm a little worried this might snap off because I can kind of move it and push it a little bit, but I obviously don't have everything bolted down. Overall size is pretty comparable to the Alien, so I'm not expecting too much difference weight wise, but I'm gonna go check Boba Fett's video now, and then we'll see if he runs that power distribution, or excuse me, the XT60 for that PDB out the back. Alright, so I've done a lot of debating and thinking, and as much as I don't like to and don't want to, I think I'm going to have to turn the board 90 degrees and have the XT60s just come right out of the side here. The reason I'm going to do that is even though it's going to be a pain for those ESC wires to kind of curl around, and they're going to have to go around the standoffs as well, having this on the side I think is pretty important. And I also think I'm going to do a top mount battery just because I like it on the Alien. I think I'll like it on this, although that will prevent me from doing a GoPro, so might go back and forth. That just changes how I attach the XT60 if I have it coming right out the side or straight up. But regardless, on the other side here, I'm going to have my 12 volt out and my 5 volt out, so I can go to my video transmitter and my camera, or the other way around, depending on which video transmitter I end up using. But I want to keep these wires as far away from the XT60 going into the power distribution board, because that's going to cause a lot of interference in my experience. So I'm going to keep these over here. That way it'll give me a little bit of room. I can still solder them in and go to their respective directions with hopefully little interference. But that's basically my plan moving forward. We'll see how that goes. I'm going to line up all the wires and get to it. Alright, so I've blown it all apart again. I've decided to go with the TBS Unify Pro here. I just found some nylon nuts, M3s, that I'm just going to use to attach that. If they're getting more stress to break that, then I don't really know if this antenna protection back here is doing its job. So I think the nylon nuts are going to be fine. I mean, worst case scenario, I just put in some other nuts later down the road. That's going to end up getting zip tied to the top frame above everything like that. And then I'll also be using Runcam Swift. I'm going to grab that later. And I didn't mention before, I'm using the Emax 2205 2600 kV. I like the higher KVs. It just gives you a little bit more top end power. So I'm really excited to try them out on this build. But with that, next step is just going to be to tin all the pads on everything, tin all the ESCs, tin all the correct connections on the flight controller. I'm also using an X4R. Didn't mention that earlier, but standard radio Tyrannus, and that's pretty much everything. So with that, I'm gonna tin everything, start to measure and cut some wires. Once I cut some wires and start soldering to ESCs, I'll show you guys that step. Alright, so I've made a little bit of progress since last time I checked in with you guys. I've just tinned the entire PDB. And then I've also just installed the Runcam Swift that I'm using to this front plate, just so I can get an idea of how everything's going to fit. I would definitely recommend getting a Runcam with a top connector for the mount, because it's going to come out the back and it'll make it a lot easier. That way you won't have wires hanging down as well. Just soldered these on. I still have to clean up the PDB and wipe it off with some alcohol. But yeah, I threw the red connector on there. It works. This is 12 gauge wire. figured I'd go with that just because it's a little overkill and I'm planning on racing this, so I want to make sure that my wire thickness is not an issue. So that's going to be coming out the side here, because the USB port is on the other side for the flight controller. So that's going to go like this because this is forward. So that way it'll be pretty much the same setup as my Alien. And from here, next steps are I'm going to tin all of the connections on the ESCs, measure the length for the motor wires, and then potentially, it'll go like that, potentially start soldering some of those up. Alright, so I've just done a quick test fit. So I soldered one motor to an ESC right now, just kind of making sure the lengths are good. I cut my next motor, going to do all four now. I don't know if I showed you, but I also already tinned all of the 4 ESCs. So basically just going to cut my motors to length. You can kind of get a good gauge for the length right there. I'm going to do that to 2 other motors, solder them to the ESCs, and then kind of get everything else and get the rest of my lengths done. And then I'm going to prepare the flight controller, work on to getting all the signal wires, or excuse me, I'm going to go to the PDB first, and then I'm going to work my signal wires to the flight controller. So I've found a few things out. I just mounted the motor here. This is where the ESC is going. I'm going to put some probably double-sided tape underneath it, just to provide a little bit of padding, and then I'm going to heat shrink wrap the entire thing. But basically what I'm doing is I'm curving the wires around the standoff here and bringing them in through these sides, and the same thing on the other side. I'm just going to have to be mindful of the fact that the video transmitter and the camera are both going to be having outputs there. But I thought I would just get you the measurements here for, so this is about 2 inches long for the shorter one, or for those of you that like metric, about 50 millimeters. And then the long one is just under 2.5 and about 6.25 centimeters. So the reason you have the longer one is because this one actually has to bend all the way around and reach the inner terminal here, and then the shorter one is on the inside and just has to reach this negative here. So it'll be the same on all of them once I have all the standoffs and everything on. So the plan for attack for this is probably going to be to solder everything to this, and then slide the heat shrink wrap over top of it, heat shrink that down, and then solder to every other connection after I do that. So now that I have these measured, I'm going to go put the flight controller on, measure all those connections, and then cut those wires as well, and I'll give you guys the wire lengths for those as well. Alright, so I've made a good bit of progress. I soldered all the wires onto the ends here. Found out it's going to be a bit of a tight squeeze here, so I might end up actually routing them between the standoff, because I did it a little bit too short to give me enough of the wiggle that I want on the wires here. So I might end up weaving them through there. Either way, I don't think it's a big deal. I have both options. I'm not particularly worried. But so I have all 4 of those done. So the ESCs are almost completely soldered up. The next steps are going to be to get the flight controller all tinned up and ready to go, and then start to measure all the lengths for all the wires going to the flight controller. And then once we measure all those lengths, solder them to here, put our heat shrink on. After we do that, then we can heat shrink it down, put them on, and then solder everything up. Alright, so I've made a little bit more progress on getting the flight controller ready. So you can see the areas that I've tinned, the 1st, 3rd, 4th, and 6th there, and then these 3 are for the X4R. And then I did the other side right here, 1st, 3rd, 4th, and 6th again. For the rest of it, I'm not going to use any of the ground or 5-volt because I already have that on the other board. So the next step are just going to be run power to the board from the PDB. Thankfully it can take anything, so I'll probably just run wires off of something extra right up to there, just probably some 24 gauge wires up through those holes to get those ready. Again, this is just going to be mounted right like this, So I'm gonna have to file out those holes a little bit more, as you usually do, but yeah, so that's gonna go in there, and hopefully I should be able to squeeze everything on there. But yeah, I realize that the board is gonna be technically backwards, but that's perfectly alright. Actually, I can just flip the whole thing around, and that way it'll be facing to the front. But yeah, now it's time to I'm going to orient this correctly, and then I'm going to measure all the wire lengths, get all those set up, solder them on, and I'll tell you guys the measurements for those as well. Alright, so I've measured the signal wires for everything. So I'm just doing ground and PWM. So the first one is about 3.5 inches. This is for the rear, so it's a bit smaller. And then it ends up being about 9 centimeters. So that's for the rear ones because they come into the back to the KISS flight controller, which is a little shorter. The front ones, fortunately, are not going to fit on my iPhone. So we're going to scroll that, and we're going to say it's about 5 inches. Yeah, it's about 4.5 inches. So those are about 4.5 inches. You can just do the conversion online. It's going to be somewhere around 11 or 12 centimeters. So those are the length for those wires. So the next step for those is I'm going to solder all those wires onto here, just the top connection here and then the ground. And then once I get all those soldered on, I'm going to put the heat shrink over this, heat shrink this down. I'll have all that set up, and I'll lay everything out and get it ready to do the final soldering, so I can show you guys that. Alright, so now I've got all the ESCs soldered up with all their wires. I'm not doing telemetry. I don't really need that. It's just extra weight. Got all the ESCs wired up. I'm getting ready to wire up the camera and the video transmitter. I have to use these nylon bolts. I found some metal ones. I was gonna use those. Then realized to be able to fit the antenna on, I needed enough clearance on the actual connector here. So you can see that just brushes right up against the nylon connectors, but I can still tighten it more. So that fits, but if I put any metal ones on, the heads are just too big, so it doesn't work. So that's why I'm sticking with the nylon ones. And basically this is going to go here, and the Unify Pro is going to kind of have its connector coming out the side, then go over here to the 5-volt on the side. I'll be sure to keep it nice and tight so that way the wires aren't going too far outside the quad that could potentially get damaged. And then I'm basically just gonna plan on hooking up the video in to this little VTX here, this one into the cam, power to 12 volts, this one to the 5 volts, and then after I solder all that up, then I'll be soldering the actual ESCs to the main board, or potentially before. I haven't decided which order yet. So once I do all that, and all these things are soldered, then I can put the board in place and start soldering all the connections to the board, including these 2 wires, which are for the powering the board. Alright, just a quick little update. So this is the plug for the Unify Pro. You can see I did the power to the 5 volts, ground to the ground here, and then I did the camera to the VTX side. And then for the Runcam Swift, I took the little plug here, did power 12 volts, ground, and then to where it says cam right here. So those 2 are connected, so basically just run the video between those 2. And those are powering both the camera and the video transmitter. So this is going to plug into the video transmitter, this will plug into the camera. So the next step is going to take all the motors and ESCs, get them lined up, solder in the positive and negative for all the ESCs, make sure that I have my jumpers correct. So this is a non-jumper, and this I believe is the shorter wires, so that goes in the back. This one has longer wires and no jumper, so this will go in the front right here. And then we have the last 2 jumpers. So this is the short one, this goes in the back here, and then this one's jumpered, goes there in the front. So that should be pretty much how everything goes on. So it looks like a mess now, but it should clean up nicely once we have the flight controller in here. So the next steps I'm going to do is solder the positive and negatives for all the ESCs. But before I do that, I'm going to put the heat shrink on before I forget, because that would not be good. Alright, so I just finished putting the heat shrink on and shrinking that down on all the motors. Really important at this point, since I heat shrinked everything, to not forget which order the motors are. So I kept them matched up here just so that way I wouldn't forget. This is a jumper on it, that is a jumper on it, because these are 1 and 3, that way they'll be reversed, and these two will be normal. So cross my fingers that that's correct. Next step is to put a little piece of foam or double-sided tape underneath the ESCs, that way it's something soft to sit on. And then I'm just going to start soldering these to the power distribution board, and then just go around and do all 4 of them. Once I have that done, I'll show you guys how that looks. So I've got all the motors mounted, all the ESCs mounted, all the positive and negative soldered. We're going to do a couple small things. So my wire lengths weren't necessarily perfect, but that's alright, they still worked, especially on this front one. I had to bring the wire in front of the standoff instead of around the inside. On the back it doesn't matter because there's not anything blocking it, but just for these two, basically made this side too long and the other side too short. So I think I might have basically flipped those on accident. So take note of that when you're making this. These are the ones that don't have jumpers on it. So what I'm going to do here with the camera plate is basically just file out a little corner on it, because the camera plate just basically fits in right here. So what I'm going to do is basically just file down that edge. So that way it gives enough clearance, and it really shouldn't be that big of a deal. Just gonna plug in the battery here quick, check to make sure all the ESCs light up and there's no smoke. So everyone lights up, it's all blue, that's good to know. So basically the next step from here, as I said, file that down. Then once I file that down, make sure that's gonna fit and work. Then I can start getting the flight controller in there. The first solder I'm probably going to make on the flight controller, so it's going to go in like this. It's just to power it. So I'm going to put those 2 wires in, solder them, then I'll probably solder the underside connections, then flip it over, finish off at the top. Make sure I put my O-rings underneath to give it a little bit of vibration damping, then put that on. Plug in my receiver, camera, VTX, and then start to bolt the rest of it all together, and we're on the home stretch here. So I'm midway through the process of soldering all the ESCs up to the flight controller. So right now, this is motor 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've soldered motor 2 and motor 4 up because they're underneath. So you can see the red is the PWM and the black is the ground. So you can see how those go on the board. So now what I'm going to do next is add the O-rings, flip this back over, mount this down, and then solder on the top ones, and then get my receiver mounted on top and get everything else situated to make sure that that's all good to go, and then I'll catch up with you guys once I have all those soldered. Alright, so we're pretty close to the finish here. I just finished soldering motor 1, I brought it underneath and then over around. This one, I actually shortened these 2 wires for 3 to go into here. This one's fine. I'm gonna have to end up moving it around a little bit depending on how the transmitter fits in there, but I'm not too worried about that. We can always just zip tie that to something. So the next steps, I'm gonna put the nuts on here, tighten the flight controller down, then I'm gonna take my X4R. This is falling off, sorry. I'm actually going to mount it upside down like this, because of the way the pin works. It just makes it fit a lot nicer with the transmitter in the back there. So this is the way that I'm going to mount it. You'll see once I put it on there and I have everything bolted down. Alright, so we're very nearly close to the home stretch here. I just bound my receiver to my Tyrannus. I've got the Runcam Swift in here. It's a 2.5 millimeter GoPro lens. Still got to focus that, get that set up. Pretty much the last final touches are to hook up this little guy right here, the Unify Pro, get him set up in the back, and then do our little cow guards, or I forget what they're called, but put those things all together and get this thing finished up. So I just wanted to go over a couple of the screws that you're supposed to use and kind of just a few of the problems that I ran into. So the long screws, you're going to get screws or bolts that are this long, and then ones that are this long. The shorter ones are actually for the standoffs. The longer ones go into the the shorter ones are for the red standoffs, the metal ones, and the longer ones actually go into these plastic standoffs. But as you can see, I have very little room in there, and I still don't have a Velcro strap on it. So I realized that quickly after that I'm definitely not bottom mounting this battery, because would have had to change things a little bit too late now to put a Velcro strap in there. I think I still could do it, but I'm just going to top mount it because that's what I have on my Alien, and that's what I like anyways, because it protects the battery a little bit more in a crash, I feel. So what I'm going to do is just pop these two off, put a Velcro strap under there, take out, I had a little piece of foam underneath there, basically put an even thinner piece in for the receiver so it's got a little bit more room between, a little bit more room so we can fit a Velcro strap in there. The TBS Unify Pro is sitting right here. I'm probably just going to throw a zip tie from here to here or something, just to hold that on, or potentially just put some double-sided tape on it. The antenna mounts back here. Eventually going to put that antenna holder in the back. And then I got TBS Triumph antenna here, which I'm planning on using in the back there, which I think should work just fine. And then you see I got my camera up front. But overall, it's coming along. Just to give you an estimate of the timeline, I had dinner during this as well, which was about a half an hour or so. But it took me about 5 hours to get to this point. So I'd say I'm pretty much done. This was my first time actually building this, obviously, and I saw that there were no videos on YouTube. So I really wanted to make this video for you guys because I kind of struggled a little bit, but I wanted to make sure that you guys had something that you could base your build off of and know that other people have done it. So that's why I did this for you guys, and I'm hoping that it helps you out. I'm just going to clean this up and then I'll show you the final product. Alright guys, after about 6 hours, this thing is officially ready to fly. The only thing that I haven't done, I've set it all up in the KISS GUI and everything. I just haven't set the rates to something similar to this, just so I'm comfortable with it. But other than that, this thing is completely set up, ready to go. I just put a little bit of hot glue through the antennas underneath. One thing I just remembered, I need to tighten down the motor bolts. Just double check those, but I got both of the cow catchers on, got my Runcam on, all the props are all spinning in the right direction. Just using the TBS Triumph under here, and the nice thing is I actually can get to the button from this side. It's just a nice little button click there, so I can change all the settings for the TBS Unify Pro right there. But this thing, it's got a good weight to it. Can't really tell, I don't know the scale unfortunately, but it seems pretty comparable weight-wise to the Alien. I would imagine that it might weigh a little bit more because it has the extra cow catchers. But then again, there's a lot of things that save weight on the Alien too, so it's probably a wash between them. In terms of weight, they're probably pretty close. My Alien's 360 grams. This one, I'm guessing, is probably 340, 350. But yeah, I did go with the top mount battery. So here's my XT60 right here. I'm going to need to get a foam pad or something to put on the top here, because my battery is definitely not going to stay like that. And I might need to adjust this battery strap a little bit, but the one thing I don't like is these screws are still elevated on the Alien. It's good because they include a nice rubber strap that your battery will fit on top of. So I really like that there. Here we weren't included that. It's also 25 bucks cheaper. I don't know. I feel like that's something that's necessary that should probably come with it. But overall, I'm pretty pleased with the way it came out. I'll definitely get some DVR footage for you guys and let you know how I think it flies, especially in comparison to this guy. As I said earlier, it's got the 2300, the 2205, 2600 kV red bottoms, the old ones, not the S. So these should be putting out a good bit of thrust, and I now have some Adrenaline series batteries, and I've been using those on my Alien, and I'm really impressed with the performance. I'm kind of a little disappointed because now that means I got to spend more money on batteries. But we'll see what happens here. Hopefully we can get a sponsor in the somewhat near future to help start paying for some of this, because this is starting to get really expensive. But yeah, this is the Kratos. I also have all the parts to build QAVR, so that is going to be my next build. Probably not going to see that for another 2 or 3 weeks at the absolute earliest, just because I have a lot going on. So look out for that video when it comes. Subscribe to my channel if you want to be notified when that becomes available. Thanks for watching again, and I wish you guys the best of luck in building your own Kratos.